Arson in the age of cryptocurrency. Neil Young is mad at Spotify for giving the Joe Rogan Experience a platform. Neil Young thinks the guests Joe Rogan allows on his podcast are misinforming people about the pandemic and the usefulness of vaccines. Neil Young told Spotify it's either me or Rogan. I thought it was hilarious that Neil Young, a successful musician since the 60s, could even get Spotify to notice that his music wouldn't be available on its streaming site anymore. Neil Young is a folk rock guy. He's not, I don't know, The Weeknd or Kanye West. I've never listened to their music, but I have heard of them. Anything they might say to Spotify would carry more weight than Neil Young's temper tantrum. But it's a different world than when Neil Young was making records in the 70s, protesting the Vietnam War and the Nixon administration. It's a world where Joe Rogan, a B-list actor and a mediocre comedian, can become the highest paid, most popular broadcaster in the world. Joe Rogan was a regular on a very funny sitcom in the 80s called News Radio. He wasn't one of the stars, but you could see him every week on TV. From there, he went on to become a successful stand-up comedian, though I've never laughed at anything he said. His act is intriguing, but it isn't funny. He makes money telling stories at comedy clubs, so technically, he is a comedian. Joe Rogan found out about podcasting and started doing that. He really leaned in and built his audience the old-fashioned way. He just kept doing it until enough people found him that he could make a career out of it. People listened and companies wanted to sponsor him. It was very smart. Joe Rogan was on the bleeding edge of the next wave of broadcasting. I've listened to the Joe Rogan podcast. It's almost always 3 hours long, so most of the time, if I'm interested in the guest, I find a compilation of the show on YouTube. It's much easier to digest in 10 to 15 minute increments than slogging through 3 hours of an unscripted interview. That's a whole lot of Joe Rogan, and I don't find him entertaining, so anyway, the Joe Rogan Experience has deep roots in this new style of broadcasting. He's deeply rooted in its beginnings. He has sponsors just like the old radio shows in the 40s. He was very smart in the way he built his brand. Podcasting was the Wild West of neo-broadcasting. There were few rules and everyone was trying to make a buck. Joe Rogan used an old-fashioned business model and turned his show into a roaring success. Spotify, one of the new kids to neo-broadcasting, came along and locked the Joe Rogan Experience into an exclusive deal. I don't know how much money changed hands, but it doesn't matter. I quit following the Joe Rogan Experience after it became exclusive to Spotify. I didn't like it that much anyway, and I didn't like Spotify. I'd heard Spotify didn't pay their artists very much, but I don't care. I didn't care for them, and the music I care about is already on my computer or lays static in a drawer on hundreds of shiny silver discs. Or on YouTube. I like YouTube. And I thought the young Rogan story would disappear as quickly as it had begun, but it didn't. It has lit up my Facebook newsfeed. The story won't die. And now I think I know why it won't die. CNN pissed off Jon Stewart, saying he called J.K. Rowling an anti-Semite. Stewart was having a conversation with someone about a scene in a Harry Potter movie, saying that anti-Semitism is so embedded in Western culture that people don't know they're doing it anymore. They made jokes and laughed a lot. Most of all, no accusations were directed towards any specific person, especially not J.K. Rowling or the Harry Potter movie. Jon Stewart could have said J.K. Rowling was guilty of unconscious or unknowing or ignorant anti-Semitism, but that would be woke. Like me, I think Jon Stewart's getting tired of woke people and the cancel culture they are so gleefully bludgeoning popular culture with these days. Jon Stewart's response was so spot on, it set off fireworks in my brain. It made my mind fizzle and spark. I could not believe he had nailed CNN so completely. He said CNN had become an arsonist. They were setting fires where none existed. Perfect. It's as if CNN was a fire department that can't make money when there are no fires. It's the difference between a community fire department created to protect itself from accidental conflagrations and what it would be like if Jeff Bezos bought all the fire departments and only got paid when he put out fires. You can see why Bezos might be pro-fire. You can see why he might hope for a mighty blaze to come and burn down whole blocks at a time. He'd make lots and lots of money putting out those fires. So I understand why the Neil Young, Joe Rogan issue is being so heavily promoted. Everyone is trying to start a fire. Everyone wants eyeballs that they can sell to sponsors so they can make money. Everyone is trying to fatten up their revenue streams. I still don't care. I still don't give two shits for Spotify, Joe Rogan, or for that matter, Neil Young. What I find hilarious is that Joe Rogan allowed his testicles to be surgically removed for a lot of easy money. Imagine how Joe Rogan would have handled Neil Young just a few years ago. Joe Rogan, the entrepreneur who built this brand one listener at a time, would have told Neil Young to blow it out his wrinkled ass. Or maybe he would have invited the old folk rocker onto his show and allowed him to vent his spleen. Now, because Neo News can't make money unless they go out and start fires, and because Joe Rogan put all his testicles in one basket, he might get canceled. And honestly, I don't give a shit.